As I put Teacher Appreciation Week behind me, I wanted to make a video because after 2 years of doing these, I got my first Etsy complaint. Now, I'm always transparent with you guys. I'm also going to post this on all of my social media feeds. So I do several different desk items, but the complaint that I got was about these scissors here. Now, I do have a disclaimer on my Etsy and on my website about the items that they are not completely round, and that even though I do spin them, it is completely impossible to get a rounded glass-like finish on every item because of the sharper edges and odd shapes. There were two specific complaints. The first one was that the seams didn't match up on one of the decals, and the second one was the bottom part of the handle, that there was epoxy on the metal. Now, these are the scissors that I use. They're Westcott scissors. And I'm going to try to zoom in here. When you take them out of the package, first of all, they are not completely smooth on the bottom. Lots of people don't look at them when you take them out of the package, but I mean, from the factory, they're not completely smooth. So just like when I'm doing a tumbler, the epoxy does have to slightly overlap on the metal. Reason for this is so that it forms a good seal and there are no gaps on the bottom where if you get any moisture under there, the epoxy is not going to lift. So there does need to be a very small amount of epoxy overlapping onto the metal handle. So not that I have to justify it because, customers don't know, but I just wanted to walk you through a little bit of the process of how I make them, especially the scissors. Just to kind of give you a little bit of perspective as to what goes into these. So this particular one that I'm doing is a pencil scissor. This isn't the one I got the complaint on, but just to show you how small of an area that I'm working with the scissors. And as you can see, the handles are not straight. They're not just up and down. There's two different sizes to the handles. One of them is skinnier, one of them is fatter. I do go in with masking tape, and there are some areas that are so tiny I have to use a paint pen as opposed to regular spray paint. As I glitter them on the smaller areas, I actually have a very, very fine paintbrush, and I have to paint on the epoxy as to not overlap on the other areas where the colors are to put the glitter on. Now here's a little bit of a closer look, and I tried to zoom in. I apologize if you can't see it. But on here, on the inside of the scissor handle, you're going to see that these decals don't completely meet up. And again, that's because of the nature of the handle where it's fatter on one end and skinnier on the other. Because on a shape such as this, it is completely impossible to have the two ends meet in the middle. This is just to give some perspective on the handles, and some I can do names, some I can't, but that is about 0.2 inches, less than a quarter of an inch that I have to work with on the skinny part of the handle. The fatter side of the handle has an angled edge, and I can't put a name on that. You'll also see towards the bottom of the handle that there is not a straight line. It is angled on both handles. So I do my best to adhere to that and to get it as straight as I possibly can. Now, I choose to use water slides, especially on these crayon scissors, just because they are much thinner and they lay flat. And with these scissors, you can't put 10 coats of epoxy on it to get them completely smooth, because then the scissors will be very fat and chunky and they just won't look right. For those of you that are not crafters, water slide paper is extremely thin. It's as thin as rice paper. It tears very easily. As you can see here, as I'm getting it off the paper, it sticks to my finger. You have to be very careful not to tear it. But this is the reason that I use it, is because it is so thin. And you'll see here in a minute, I'll show you how the vinyl is. And although vinyl isn't, extremely thick, it does add just a little bit of a bump. And I don't want that when I do my final coat. I want it to be as smooth as possible. So you'll see here as I'm manipulating it and lining it up, again, you have to keep it wet as you manipulate it. And the great thing about these water slides is that they stretch if you coat them properly. So as I stretch them, I kind of angle them around the handle here, so they hopefully meet the best they can on the inside. And I always put the seam on the inside because you don't want an ugly seam on the outside where, I try to camouflage it, but, if you can't, at least it's on the inside, you're not going to see it. It takes a couple tries to manipulate it and pat it down, make sure that it's all on there. And again, you need to allow some dry time for this as opposed to vinyl where you can coat it right away. The water slide does need to dry because you cannot trap any moisture underneath your final coat of epoxy, because you will definitely have issues. The harder part about the water slides is that they don't have an adhesive on the back like vinyl does. Vinyl, you peel it off, it's sticky on the back, you stick it on. Water slides are not sticky on the back, they're slippery. So when you place them, you have to make sure that they're completely dry. And then once they dry, they adhere to the surface. But while they're wet, they will slide around. They have no adhesive on the back at all. So it takes a couple minutes to manipulate it and get it where you want it, and then make sure to dry it. Now I'm going to show you here in a second, and it may be hard to see, but because there is no adhesive, sometimes it likes to buckle up. And on the side here, you'll see that it's buckled. It's hard to see, I know, but I see it. So I have to continue pushing that down until all of the water is pressed out, and then it will lay flat on the handle. Here's the vinyl I was referring to earlier. It's hard to see again, but there is a little teeny bit of a raised spot if you use vinyl as opposed to the water slide, which I'm going to show here, which is flat and printed on, just flat paper. And here, as you can see, even with these scissors, I have to use a paintbrush to get the epoxy on. So again, not going to be 100% completely glass-like smooth. And that is the beauty of a handmade item. No two are identical, and they do have little teeny tiny, I guess, imperfections, if you want to call it, but that's what makes them great. That's what makes them special. If you've made it this far, thank you so much. I know this was a very long video, and as I said, I'm going to post it on all my socials, but I wanted to give you guys a little bit of insight as to what actually goes into making these. So have a great day. Thank you.